Okay. Yeah, thanks for setting this all up. So we'll just start the session as we would if we're coming into the shrine room. So we'll just take a few moments to ground ourselves. So if you want to make yourself comfortable, you don't necessarily need to be in meditation posture, but we'll just spend a few minutes gathering, and then I'll introduce myself a bit more fully and what we're going to talk about today. So when you're ready, if you want to go ahead and just close your eyes. Just invite you to take a few longer, deeper breaths. I want to breathe out through your mouth. Just help the body release, relax, let go. Just let the energy sink down. The ground come up to meet you in that. So we can sit feeling supported by the earth. You might notice any sounds we can hear in our environment. People moving around, traffic, bird song. Let's come back to a sense of touch in the body, contact with the seat or the chair, cushion, feeling of our clothes and the skin, temperature, warm or cold. Just noticing what's going on in our experience right now. So our attention turns into the body, seeing if we can let it rest upon the breath. Just noticing what the quality of the breath is like. If it's smooth, silky, or a bit hoarse and catching. Whatever your experience is, just letting that be. Just feeling the way each breath moves the body slightly differently. The stomach expands, the chest rises, the nostrils flare a little. Just expanding that awareness out to the whole body, letting the breath fill the body. The heart be open, the chest open. Noticing again any sounds we can hear. Any movements happening around us. In a moment I'll ring the bell. You can come out of a little meditation and open your eyes. Okay, great. Yeah, well, that helped me gather myself, so I hope it was helpful for you too. So today I titled the talk I'm going to speak around this morning, this moment is the only moment. And I'm going to be exploring teaching called the 4 reminders or the 4 mind tones. As to work my way into that, I'll just say a bit about myself and what my experience has been like over the last few weeks. So my name is Moksadhi, and I live down in Bethnal Green in East London. I live in a Buddhist community with 11 other practitioners. I've been living here for about 2.5 years. And normally on a day-to-day business, I work in a charity shop, Lama's Pajamas, which is a charity shop for the London Buddhist Centre. So that's what I was doing when kind of coronavirus started creeping into our world in a kind of very gradual way initially. And when I reflect back on that time, I think it was quite interesting you could kind of see this situation moving closer and closer towards you, but I think there was still in my mind I couldn't quite take in that was going to impact my world, even though you could see it coming. And I think I only really took that in when the London Buddhist Centre closed. That what was happening around the world, I suppose, particularly in China and Italy at that time, that lockdown was going to happen. I could only really believe it when it started actually affecting my life. And yeah, I kind of in the blurb for this talk, I started it with saying the future's been cancelled, and that was something I think I don't know if it was Maitreya Bandhu or Subhuti or someone said quite early on, but I felt like it was a really good way of describing the situation, because I think initially it was just like a lot of letting go, to like let go of the fact I wasn't going to be able to go to work anymore, and like I really enjoy connecting with the customers and the community, and there's lots of people that come into the shop just to talk to us every day, and okay, so that's not happening anymore. I was supposed to go on solitary, and that's not happening anymore. And it's like your whole whatever was in your diary, it's just like crossed out, and you just can write lockdown, like not going anywhere. And I think what was quite revealing in the situation for me, and how it's affected my life, is that how much of a sense of control I imagine through planning my life and having a diary and trying to fix things. And I think the virus has really shown us that this kind of sense of control that we experience is an illusion, and that it's very human situation is very fragile. Yeah, and I guess it's that sense of when we're out of control, whatever's happening, when things are happening out of our control, our response to that can be one of fear. But I think there's 2 really positive things that we can take out of that. And I mean, the first one is that change is possible. So it doesn't not everything's out of our control, and we can use the teachings of the Buddha and use what we know from the Dharma to learn how to control what we do with our minds, how to work with our minds, how to stay with this sense of uncertainty, without trying to control external circumstances that we don't have any control over. So I'm going to unpack all that a bit more with using the teaching of the mind turnings. So it comes from the Tibetan tradition. Particularly, there's a teacher called Tsongkhapa, who I think was alive in the 14th century, and but it's a general teaching of Tibetan Buddhism, and that fits into it. It's called the Lamrim teaching. So it's like different stages of the path. So I'm just going to recite to you the verses of the 4 mind turnings, and then we'll go through and explore them a bit more together. And yeah, if questions come up at any time, do put them in the chat box. So the verses are these. This human birth is precious, an opportunity to awaken. But this body is impermanent. Ready or not, one day I shall die. So this life I must know, as a tiny splash of a raindrop, a thing of beauty that disappears even as it comes into being. The karma I create shapes the course of my life, but however I act, life always has difficulty. No one can control it all. Only the Dharma can free me and others from suffering forever. Therefore I recall my heart's longing for freedom and resolve to make use of every day and night to realize it. And it was interesting, I don't know if any of you were listening to Smriti Ratna on Wednesday, but at the end of his talk, that these are the verses that he came to. So there's a nice synchronicity of this talk following on from what he was talking about in terms of like bringing these reflections to light. And there are other versions. There's a more poetic one that I'll just read the start of, because I really like this particular translation, which starts with the human body at peace with itself is more precious than the rarest gem. Cherish your body. It is yours this one time only. Yeah, so that's coming in around the preciousness of human birth. So there's the 4 mind turnings, as they're called, that come out of these verses. So the first one is the preciousness of human birth. The second is the truth of impermanence, particularly death. And then the teaching of karma, and the 4th one is the defects of samsara. So I'm going to take each of the mind turnings one by one, but as you'll notice, like as I start talking about one, or as you reflect on one, you kind of inevitably start reflecting on the others. They're all interconnected, as with many teachings of the Buddha. And how they help is that they can kind of guide us towards truth and help us see what it is to be human and what it is to live a human life, and encourage us to move toward living more from the truth, and to find meaning in our lives. Yeah, in a more kind of expansive and connected way of living. And they're things that, if you haven't heard this teaching before, there'll be things that you've already experienced or noticed in your life before. So like the preciousness of human birth, like you might already be in touch with the freedoms that you experience, even within lockdown, and the liberties that we have, especially in society, and the opportunities like our good health. So we might be in touch with the preciousness of our human lives, and kind of inevitably, as we move through life, we come into contact with death, people that we know die, and people we don't know die, and that's particularly prevalent at the moment as we see all these numbers. We read the news every day of how many people have died, which can be quite overwhelming. But I guess we can also touch impermanence just through changes of circumstance in our lives, and that could even be positive positive changes to change your context, start a new job, move house, start a new relationship, or end a relationship. And then the third reminder around karma, like it's very, we can become aware of that our actions have consequences, and the mental state that we find ourselves in, whether it's creative or reactive, will have an effect on how we experience the world. Which relates to the fourth reminder around the defects of samsara, and that suffering is a consequence of being human, and that means that however I act, life always has suffering, because things happen out of our control, such as a virus coming into the world and changing all of our conditions. I think it's around 2/3 of the world are in lockdown right now, which is quite a thought. Most people are staying home unless they have to go out to work. So in turning towards the defects of samsara, we can move towards greater freedom as we kind of go through pain to find beauty. Yeah, so that's a bit of an overview. So I'll go now through the teachings or each reflection one by one. So starting with this human birth is precious. And that might sound obvious. I mean, in some ways it does sound obvious, but how much do we actually take that in? How much do we really value the opportunity that we've been given through being alive? And we live in quite, like in Western society, we have quite a materialistic, consumerist culture, and often quite a nihilistic culture, where we can reach the point of like, well, what's the point of our lives? Can be like hedonistic, I suppose. We're pleasure seeking, and there's so many things available at our fingertips, so much entertainment, drink and drugs and sex, and like that we can just turn towards that, and in doing that we can cut ourselves off from how precious our lives are. And really, I guess the kind of miracle of our existence, right from our formation in the womb to where we are now, like the particular set of conditions that had to come into being to bring us to this point in time. And then once we're here, I mean, the other version of the text, this human body at peace with itself is more precious than the rarest gem. Cherish your body, it is yours this one time only. So I really like this phrase, cherish your body. Yeah, when we look after our body, we can look after our minds at the same time. And I think this, for me, it's become particularly prevalent, or this reflection in my mind, because I think I feel very connected to the fact that the virus affects our lungs, and there's hundreds of thousands of people are suffering through the loss of their lung function, and that each breath that we breathe brings our life force into being, and that is something to be incredibly grateful for. So cultivating gratitude and appreciation for our bodies and all the conditions supporting it, yeah, I think brings forward a positive attitude in life, kind of brings forward confidence and faith. If we cultivate gratitude and appreciation, they kind of come hand in hand. Yeah, and I mean, we can reflect on this in small ways as well, I guess, like in every meal that we eat, every meal that we're able to eat. At the moment, is particularly, we can be grateful for the people that are still working in the shops, the supply chains that are bringing the food to us, and just take the food all the way back to where it's come from, and gratitude to the people that have grown it and supplied it, and all that nourishes our bodies and keeps our minds alert at the same time. So we can practice this gratitude in lots of ways. And the second part of this reflection, this human birth is precious, an opportunity to awaken. So we've got an opportunity to awaken. So how exciting is that? And you know, one of the translations of Buddha, of the term Buddha, is he who is awake, he who has woken up. And so we too have this opportunity to wake up. So we're very fortunate to be born in a time when the teachings of the Buddha, when the Dharma is accessible to us. And even though it was 500 years ago that the Buddha walked this earth, those teachings have been faithfully handed down to us through the lineage of his disciples, which is also a miraculous thing that we can kind of be grateful for. And that's led to places like Dharma coming into being, very beautiful, spacious places where we're able to step out of the world and step into a different space. So that's kind of how I experience going to Dharma is like stepping into a more mythical realm. And I've also been noticing during this time where I can't do that, and I'm not alone in that, because most of us are just at home, is that is possible and through the imaginal realm. And often when I'm meditating, I think about like I evoke beautiful, spacious places, and Dharma is one of those places to be by the loch, or to be with the force of the burn running down through the hills, and the constant flow of the water brings a sense of spaciousness that I can't experience here in East London in such a direct way, but I can access that. So our imagination is a helpful way to connect with the preciousness and beauty that exists in our lives. And we also have the Buddha as an example of what is possible, of what our own potential is. As the Buddha was born as a human being, and he went on a quest. And he was born a prince, and he had a lot of pleasure. He had a lot of pleasure in his life: beautiful women, beautiful food, athletic sports and entertainment. He was part of a warrior clan and was trained in that way. But he saw that wasn't what life was about. This kind of pleasure seeking, and he saw through that and saw beyond that by what I call the four sights. Like, he saw a sick person, he saw an old person, and he saw a dead person, and that kind of propelled him, like woke him up, this sense of waking him up that there has to be more than just seeking pleasure in life. So I guess it's a similar kind of hedonistic lifestyle where we're just seeking pleasure. It's just actually trying to seek freedom instead. And the fourth sight that the Buddha saw was the sadhu, the kind of wandering ascetic and thought, and that was what propelled him to leave home and go out on this quest. Yeah, so we have a vision. We have a vision of what's possible, and a vision of what happens if we follow this quest, a quest for freedom. And that kind of those four sights kind of lead us on into impermanence. The second reminder. So I'll just read the bit of the verse. But this body is impermanent. ready or not, one day I shall die. So this life I must know is the tiny splash of a raindrop, a thing of beauty that disappears even as it comes into being. So kind of having evoked a sense of gratitude, of appreciation, of potential, connecting with that through our hearts and our imagination, particularly through the image of the Buddha, we can, with that kind of positive background, we can turn towards looking at impermanence and death, where it's held in a much bigger space. If we just, sometimes I guess there's a danger if we just go straight into looking at impermanence and be like, oh, okay, I just want to see through this, then we can end up tipping back into nihilism. So it's good to cultivate the positive before we turn towards looking at the more challenging aspects of the truth of reality. But as I was saying, as I was introducing the talk, this kind of truth that things aren't in our control, not all things are in our control, and that there is the truth of impermanence, that all things will end, does have a positive slant to it. It's that if we can see that everything is in the process of change, that can be free, and that can lead to freedom, and that is, everything is in the process of change. So even things that we might think of as permanent, like mountains or the moon, like the moon's always up there in the sky. I guess it changes the face of it, or wax and wane, but there's this like big rock up in the sky that we kind of can view things as permanent, but even that's slowly changing, slowly being worked away. And we can notice the change, maybe not through the physical thing that we're encountering. Like my bedroom can seem very stable and permanent, but we can notice the change, this process of change, just through noticing how we are. Like each time you enter a space, like checking with yourself and noticing, oh, I'm a bit grumpy and irritable, or I feel really well, my throat's sore. So we're constantly in a process of change. And I think that the images in the Buddhist tradition and in this mind turning, they're very beautiful. So a tiny splash of a raindrop, or in the other version is like lightning in the sky. And there's another famous verse from the Perfection of Wisdom sutras, which I'll just read to you, that kind of evokes some of this imagery. So it says, as stars, a faulted vision, as a lamp, a mock show, dewdrops, or a bubble, a dream, a lightning flash, or a cloud, so we should view that which is conditioned. So I find these images very beautiful, or they're a very kind way into this truth of impermanence, like a bubble kind of popping, yeah, water flowing, like to sit and, or if you have had the opportunity to sit and watch a field of grass covered in dew, and the steam rising up from it as the sun comes, and the disappearance of those dewdrops as they evaporate away. They're very, very beautiful experiences that can be very profound if we just kind of let what's happening into our hearts. So they help us experience impermanence and the beauty of that change. And then if we're able to apply that to our own lives, there's a way to freedom in that we can loosen our attachments to bigger things. Well, and smaller things. And I think that's something like or I certainly found, as I was saying at the beginning of the talk, that the experience of COVID has had us to, everything's changed so much. So it only becomes painful if I'm attached to a particular outcome. If I hold fast to the fact that I really want to go and see my friends or and my family, it causes me more suffering than just being with the fact that right now I can't go and see them. No one can go and see their friends and family in the ways that they would want to, because we need to do that to keep each other safe. So the kind of in accepting the change and loosening our attachment to a particular fixed outcome, we're able to expand our horizon, and it causes us less pain. Yeah, and there's another teaching I'll just refer to, which is a similar teaching, but from the earlier tradition, from the Pali Canon, which is 5 reflections for everyone. It's called the 5 reflections for everyone that the Buddha taught, and the first 3 reflections are on similar to the four sights. So it's a reflection on old age, a reflection on sickness, and a reflection on death, and that those things will happen to us. If we're lucky, we'll grow old. We will experience sickness because our bodies are out of our control. We can't stop that happening, and at some point we will all die. And then I find that the 4th reflection I'll just read to you, because I find it particularly poignant and challenging. And it is that I must be separated and parted from all that is dear and beloved to me. I must be separated and parted from all that is dear and beloved to me. So for me, I think I can start to move towards accepting the fact that I will die. But if I start reflecting on the fact that everyone I love will die and I'll be parted from them, I find that a bit more challenging. But it's good to I guess if we can turn our minds towards that, then when change happens, and change can happen very unexpectedly, we're more prepared, we're more resourced, because we've reflected on that truth. And whether it's when we die and we lose everyone, because nothing can come with us, or if we lose someone else, or we lose someone through the end of a relationship, there will always be a parting. There will always be a parting. In some ways, we need to let our hearts break. We need to let that pain come in, and it might seem impossible or feel impossible to be with that intensity of difficulty, but beauty comes through from that, which is where these images help. The dewdrop, the lightning flash, splash of the raindrop. And I think they help just in that they communicate the truth, and we can't fight that truth of impermanence. So if we can accept it, beauty arises. And in the tradition, it's a gateway to freedom, this reflection on impermanence. And if we can stay with it, we enter the realm of the signless. And I think there's something quite important in this, and that the realm of the signless, we can see how we create our own suffering somewhat through relating to things that are impermanent as permanent, and we do that through labeling them. And obviously language is a great tool, but when we label things, we fix them, and we think that they're not going to change, and then when they do change, we're kind of shocked, and upset, and that causes us pain. So I guess like an example of that would be if I like the label of girlfriend or partner or boyfriend is like fixes them as a particular person in your life, and kind of if those relationships end, we can just see them as that, rather than seeing the whole of their humanity and all the different conditions that make them up, which still exist. So we want to try and connect with the flow, like the flow of experience. That's one way of relating to impermanence, is that everything is constantly in flow, everything is constantly in change, everything has that quality of beauty and preciousness. So it can be a very to dwell on impermanence can be very, very, very free and liberating. But we need to do that on the basis of connecting with the preciousness of our human life and gratitude. Like they both play into each other. And I think if you do dwell on impermanence, you do come into touch with the precious opportunity that we have to wake up and to step into a space of more spaciousness, connection, and freedom. Yeah, and so the third reflection of karma flows out of this, I think, or in a positive way of, we're faced with this predicament that we're subject to old age, sickness, and death. And the reflection on karma gives us an opportunity to think, well, what are we going to do about this? So karma means action, or could be described as like making conscious change, choosing how to act with our body, our speech, and our mind. And each action of body, speech, and mind that we make creates an effect. So that's, of course, a slightly different term. That's the karma vipaka. So the consequences of our actions. So karma is just the action, and then the vipaka is the consequences. Yeah, so we can choose how to act. And I've found being at home these last weeks has been a really good opportunity to watch my mind and watch what my mind is doing, just because I've had a bit more space. Like I've not had to go to work 5 days a week, and obviously everyone's situation is different in this, but I've been taking the opportunity to watch my mind a bit and see where I'm reacting and see where I'm able to respond creatively. And in each moment that we have a choice of whether we react habitually, or if we're able to respond creatively. So this is one of the key teachings that Sangharakshita, who founded the True Atma movement, offered us as a way of understanding how we move towards a more enlightened mind is through the creative mind. Yeah, and a responsive way of being. And the great one of the many great things about the Buddha's teaching is that Buddhism does start with the mind, and that we can change our mind. So the first verses of the Dharma Pada are the experiences preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. So what we do with our mind has an effect, and it affects our speech and it affects our actions. So we can train our minds. We can train our minds through meditation. We can train our minds through, particularly, I guess, through mindfulness, being with the breath, allowing the breath to be a meeting place between the mind and the body, connecting with our feelings and our thoughts, and letting the breath just quieten down those processes, slow things down, and letting us, just giving us more of a chance to notice what's going on and what our habits are. And with the metta practice, which is just such a radical practice, we can train our minds to become more and more kind and more caring, and even with people that we find difficult. So it's a cultivation of loving kindness. That's like the translation of the metta. We can cultivate kindness, and we can cultivate a compassionate response to suffering through our meditation practice. So those would be skillful responses. Skillful ways of training the mind. So we're trying to move towards more and more skillful responses, and away from unskillful reactions where we might speak harshly, or do something that we regret, or even just having a harsh, like running arguments round and round in our mind, that has an effect on us. It doesn't feel good, and it means we're more and more likely to play those arguments out when we encounter that person again. So we always have a choice. We always have a choice about what we do with our minds, and the choice to try and respond creatively. And I think, especially at the moment when our kind of social circles have been closed down around us a bit, we're more likely to react to those that we're close to. Yeah, so it's important to try and put some space around our communication, or to work to know, just to notice what, if you are reacting, what's happening with your mind, what you're upset about, and can you come into communication about that rather than reacting. And this is the training in the ethical precepts as well. So I mean, the Buddha is great. He just kind of lays it all out for us. So he gives us these 5 training principles, 5 ethical training principles to kind of help us fine-tune our moral compass and move towards a more consistently creative response to the world. So these are training in kindness, training in generosity, in cultivating contentment, in cultivating truthful speech, and in cultivating mindfulness. And we don't always get it right, but that's why they're called training principles. So we notice where we get it wrong, and become more attuned to that as we practice these ethical principles, which aren't anything. They're nothing kind of outside of they're a natural response to the world. They're not something that we just really need to go and learn. It's something that's inherent within us that we just need to draw out more and more fully. Just for example, if you're walking down the road and you see someone fall over, your natural response is to go and help. So we're just trying to bring forward that natural response more and more, because it can get a bit lost to us sometimes. So we can reflect more and more deeply on the choices that we make and the consequences of actions that we've made in the past and actions that we're making now, because they will shape the course of our life, and they'll shape the landscape of our minds. So if we're able to work with our minds to create more and more positive habits, the landscape of our mind will change, and it will make those positive habits more and more likely to grow in their fullness. Yeah, so the karma I create shapes the course of my life. And we can work to create more and more positive mental states, even if conditions are difficult, just as the conditions are in now are difficult. And I think particularly the metta bhavana is very important in this, because there's so much suffering out there in the world. And that's always true, but it seems more and more apparent to us now. And in order to take that in, we need to cultivate this a big mind that's filled with kindness, so we can hold this truth of impermanence and death more fully, and act on the preciousness of our human birth. And all those reflections come together in the fourth reflection, which is the defects of samsara. So having reflected on karma and the fact that we can change the course of our life, and we do create our lives through our conscious actions of body, speech, and mind. It goes on to say, but however I act, life always has suffering. No one can control it all. And yet we can make conscious choices, conscious positive choices, and yet we cannot control it all. And we know, you'll know this in your experience, throughout your lives. And then we've got this particular connecting thing at the moment with COVID, where none of us can control this. It's happened to us on a global scale, and it's affected it's affected all of us, and it affects all of us differently depending on all the choices that we made up to this point. In some ways, I feel like with what's happened with COVID, where we've kind of got this big pause on life, everyone is faced with the choices that we've made up to this point, because we're now having to live with them. It's like wherever we are, whatever choices we've made, that's kind of what we're stuck with for the time being, because it's very hard to make any big changes when we've all got to stay at home. Yeah, so we're kind of faced with the consequences of our actions to this point, and the choices that we've made. Yeah, so that it does affect us all uniquely. And some of us are still going out to work. I live with some key workers that are still working, people that are working from home, people that are retired. Like I live with people in the vulnerable category that can't go out. So I see even in the house that I'm in now, there's a whole range of experiences in response to this. And people are losing loved ones, people are dying. So we can't control how and when that happens. And the particular reflection that we're looking at here in this mind turning is that the first noble truth that the Buddha expounded is that there is suffering. So we're seeing that here, that coming out of the truth of impermanence is the truth that there is suffering, and that arises through our clinging and attachment to things that are impermanent, because we want them to be permanent, we want them to stay the same, and we want a sense of control. And then when that's taken away from us, we suffer. So there's an opportunity at the moment, I guess, to see that more and more clearly. Yes, this truth of impermanence and the suffering that arises, can arise from it. It doesn't have to. We can free ourselves from it. That's the important thing to remember. Yeah, and again, just to come back to metta and how important it is to cultivate a positive mind, so as not to get overwhelmed by the situation, the human situation that we're presented with, which is always true, but very, very visible to us now. And we can also work with this. So I talked about ethics and the precepts, yeah, and training the mind through meditation, the sangha, the community. We can connect in ways like this on Zoom. We can come together in friendship. We can do devotional practices, cultivate our faith. We have a vision of how we can change, what we can move towards in the Buddha. Yeah, we can kind of, there's an opportunity, like there's our opportunity as individuals to change, and this opportunity as a collective for humanity to change towards something more positive in the big cause. So we can cultivate an attitude of faith, and we have the opportunity to hear the Buddha's teachings, and we can listen to them, we can reflect on them, and we can meditate upon them, and that can help us come into a closer relationship with these truths, and a more positive relationship, if we can do that in relation to others, and with faith that change towards something more positive as possible. And I think if we're ever coming into overwhelm about the scale of suffering that we're facing in the world, we can come back to generosity, and we can come back to kindness, and even just in the small ways, which might be just giving a friend a phone call, if we're able to just make a donation to do that. Yeah, sending someone a card, making someone a cup of tea, just small things. If we can do a small thing for someone else, it often takes us out of our own anxiety and helps us see that our actions make a difference. And I think there's a real sense of solidarity in what we're going through in the moment, and we can connect with that in our metta bhavana, in the last stage of the metta bhavana, as we bring more and more people to mind. and knowing that everyone is being touched by this situation and that we're all connected. So we're not alone. We're not in this alone. Yeah, so that's the defects of samsara. And I suppose just one more thing to say in that is this: we've got this line, no one can control it all. And I think if we can kind of surrender ourselves to that, like surrender to the lack that we can't control everything. There's only so much we can control, and much of that is our responses and trying to respond creatively. That we kind of like let go. There's like something immediately in me that just kind of wants to relax and think, oh, no one can control it all. It's like we can't fix everything. Because change will constantly happen. And so it's like, oh, okay, I'll just relax back into that. And I'm just going to say something else from the Dhammapada. It's from the mindfulness chapter of the Dhammapada, which is a very early Buddhist text. And the Buddha says, by means of energy, mindfulness, self-restraint and control, let the man of understanding make for himself an island that no flood can overwhelm. So I really like this line of, well, we can make for oneself an island that no flood can overwhelm. So through our practice, and Buddha draws out the qualities of energy. So that's that kind of positivity we've been exploring. Mindfulness, so just being aware of our responses and whether we're reacting or responding. Self-restraint and control. So I see that as a kind of turning away from the pleasure seeking, so a kind of renunciation and movement towards the Dharma. We can become an island to oneself. So no flood can overwhelm. So I can experience. I can experience the flood. I say a flood of suffering at the moment that can be overwhelming. But if we're able to resource ourselves sufficiently and hold our mindfulness and our connection with all beings, then we can kind of weather this storm together. So the final verse, just coming towards the end of the talk now. The final verse of the text says, "Therefore I recall my heart's longing for freedom and resolve to make use of every day and night to realize it." Yeah, therefore I recall my heart's longing for freedom. So I really recommend that you memorize these verses. They're quite short verses. So therefore I recall. So we have to remind ourselves again and again and again. It's so easy to forget the preciousness of the opportunity that we have and to turn towards the truths that are expounded in the mind turnings in this way. So we have to remember to turn towards our experience and turn towards these teachings. And he's recalling my heart's longing for freedom. So it's that I relate to that in terms of this quest the Buddha went on to transcend the human predicament, to allow ourselves to live more freely amongst impermanence and amongst suffering. And so we live amongst beauty, we live amongst connection, and we can imagine what is possible when we sit with gratitude as well. So we're always trying to, this heart's longing for freedom, for me, I see that as moving to something much more expansive. And having connected with that vision of connection and gratitude and love, we resolve to make use of every day and night to realize it. And that's where, again, it's good to have these teachings to bring to mind, like at the tips of our fingertips, which is why I kind of recommend learning to recite it. And just to come to the title, so I titled the talk, "This moment is the only moment." And so I think that with the mind turns, there is a sense of urgency that is evoked to keep recalling the Buddha's teaching to mind. And the only moment we can do that is this moment, and then the next moment, and just to stay in touch with this truth and with this vision that we're trying to move towards. Yeah, and we're trying. And that is a vision where more and more people become happy as we work with our own minds. We can share ourselves more and more fully, and share the Dharma more and more fully in the sense of human solidarity and intimacy, that where we can connect with each other through each of us having this unique, precious human birth. And it's worthy of our attention. Whatever is happening in each moment is worthy of our attention. And that's where the breath is such an important anchor, I guess, to our direct experience, which allows us to contact both the preciousness of human birth and the beauty of impermanence, and this constant flow of life and change that we are part of. It's like a dance that we're all part of. And I really think the breath is a very good way into that. So we're recalling our heart's longing for freedom. So again and again, recall the heart's longing for freedom, and then we've got this resolve to make use of every day in life to realise that. And with that resolve, we can use our practice of ethics and the precepts of meditation, training the mind. And then these are wisdom teachings of looking at impermanence and death and suffering. And that's all in the context of gratitude and beauty and imagination, embodied in the Buddha that comes from this precious human birth. So that is the end of the talk. Thank you very much for listening. I'll just say a couple more things. So thanks again to Kay and to Dharma Kosha for hosting these events. I've really been appreciating coming along to them myself, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you all today. And if you would like to make a donation to Dharma Kosha, that would be really, really fantastic. You may or may not know that Dharma Kosha runs all its retreats on the basis of generosity, and when Dharma Kosha reopens, it will continue to do that. And it's the same with this online program. We're just it's being given to you, and if you would like to give back, that would be very much appreciated, as this is the income stream right now, as retreats aren't coming in. So you can do that through the website. There's lots of links on the website to just make a donation. So if you're able to do that, that would be really fantastic.
Yeah, just a massive thank you, Moksadhi. That was really beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this for us, for our online program, and for reaching out with the Dharma. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I'll just change the review. Thanks everyone for coming, and hope you have a nice morning, and keep in touch. Let us know of any comments or feedback that you'd like to make. And bye for now.
See you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.